Welcome to another episode of the Then and Now podcast, greatest podcast in the world, universe, multiverse, and all that good stuff. My boy, we are one person short today. We have just me and Ethan today. Our friend Otis is in Chicago right now promoting his brand new book, Briarlands, along with our buddy Stan Batman Thomas. They have some dope shit. Briarlands is an amazing book. I've read the first issue myself, and I cannot wait to the rest of the world to catch on to that.
Exactly. It's a big day. We are very proud of our boy, but we understand that he cannot be here because he's priorities, definitely priorities. He wanted us to stress how grateful he is for the show and how he actually wanted to do the show even though he's there. And we told him no. We said no, please just focus on what you got there instead. So
great. Again, shout out Otis and Stan. We are proud of you guys, man.
Yeah.
Today we're gonna be discussing the new show that dropped recently. Mr. Obi-Wan Kenobi has gotten his own show. I have been excited about this. Well, first off, let me go ahead and get the gameplay on. This gameplay is of Jedi, Star Wars, the Jedi. Oh my god, I can't talk today. Star Wars: The Fallen Order.
There you go. You got there.
There we go. I enjoyed the game a lot. It's dope. If you haven't played it, go play it. Make sure I turn the audio down a little more.
Yeah.
But we're gonna be discussing Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I think it's just called Obi-Wan, right? Is the actual title of the show?
Yes, it's called Kenobi. It's called Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Okay. I've always been a fan of this character. Obviously, like you guys know, I'm 22. So around the time these movies kind of got big was around the time I started to watch a lot of nerd stuff and got into Star Wars a lot. So one of my first introductions to Star Wars were with the actors that portrayed these characters. And to me, this character was really dope. So much so that the Clone Wars version of himself was based off of that animated the animated version was based off of the live action one with gestures, mannerisms, and all. I don't know if he voiced it.
He did not voice it. No.
Damn, I couldn't tell. They sound very similar.
Yeah, that voice actor is it's the same voice actor that's done Obi-Wan since back in the day when they had on Cartoon Network. They had the original that little mini. You remember those 5-minute episodes?
Yeah.
It's that same voice actor from back then, not Ewan McGregor. So
well, they nailed that. They sound really similar to me.
Yeah, he's great. The voice actor's great.
So really quickly, I know you had a lot of preliminary thoughts. I'm gonna let you start off on your thoughts of the 2 episodes generally first before we get into anything in depth.
Yeah. So this will be a fun episode because this is one where Dev and I, or Soups and I, are pretty much polar opposite on the show. My first thoughts were, I love Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. I was somewhat old enough to my first impression of Obi-Wan was Alec Guinness back in the 80s. I didn't see the first one in the theater. I'm not that old, but I did see. I was old enough to have seen Return of the Jedi in the theater, but I didn't remember much of it. I was really small, but I was old enough to be there. And it's funny how I almost immediately I was like, "Yo, this is spot on casting." When they did the prequels, Ewan McGregor seemed perfect for it, and he was by far the best part of the prequels, in my opinion, and in most people's opinions. And then when they announced forever ago they were trying to do an Obi-Wan series, I was like, "Yo!" And Ewan McGregor was still psyched about it. I was like, "Yeah, I'm on board for this. Let's dance. Let's do this. Let's make it happen." And when I saw that first trailer, I was like, "My man, looking good. Got that beard game strong. Set 10 years later. Let's dance." That beard game was crisp, boy. That's crisp beard game. And I sat down and watched the show on Disney Plus. I was all excited, all happy. I had my popcorn. I had my popcorn soup. You know how much I love my popcorn.
You love popcorn. He's got the setup on.
I can't sleep on popcorn, man. I love my popcorn. And I started eating it, and I was watching it, and I was like, okay, this is kind of slow, little slow, but I'm feeling it. I get this. And the thing was weird about it, Dev. Now, this is a full spoilers, right? We're doing the full spoilers or the semi.
Yeah, for people that don't know, this is just full spoilers for the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, full spoilers. The thing about it was, it opens with Order 66, but you're seeing it from the perspective of the younglings and other Jedi, right? And I thought it was a well shot scene. It was fun. It was intense, but it is a little odd that the show opened because that part with the Order 66 and those younglings doesn't tie in directly to the show at all. Maybe it does later on, someday down the road. We'll see that Jedi.
It does specifically. It's more like, again. Go ahead. My bad. Finish up. My bad.
No, I thought it'd be interesting if it showed like actually Obi-Wan. Obviously, we saw in the movies what happened with Order 66 with him, but it doesn't show him dealing with the stress at that time. It shows other random Jedi, and it shows other random younglings, and we don't see Anakin either doing these things. It's like it's almost we just see Order 66 affecting some of the other people, yeah, but it's not connected to anything. And it kind of lost some of its luster for me.
Right.
It's fun to watch, but it's kind of the same thing as drinking a big ass beer. It's like it's may be cool when it's going down, but it's empty calories. That's kind of how it felt.
Right.
So now you were saying that it does tie in though.
Yeah, what they're doing is because obviously, like, unless you're a big Star Wars fan, I doubt anybody watched Star Wars Rebels, and all the
I watched
extra
Rebels,
content
though.
that involved the Inquisitors.
Yeah.
So for this show, for a lot of people, it's gonna be the first time the Inquisitors are even introduced. People don't even know where they came from. They're just like, oh, we thought all the Jedi died in Order 66. Now we have all these other random Sith lords that pop up.
Yeah.
They're pretty much introducing the fact that the Inquisitors are Jedi that defected or were tortured and brought over. So I think that's what that served its purpose to do. Because in preceding that, they focus really hard on Reva, the third sister, which is an Inquisitor, which I'm pretty sure she is the little black girl that was a part of that group of Padawans that were running away.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that's how that ties directly in. It's more so to introduce a concept that a lot of people may not know about unless you like consumed a lot of the other extra content, which I feel like the masses didn't. Like a lot of the masses didn't play this game, The Fallen Order, or they didn't watch Star Wars Rebels and all the other extra shows that involve these characters specifically. Like the Grand Inquisitor specifically, like he was all over Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah.
So seeing him come in now,
So
like, oh damn,
more
that's
the
dope.
hat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dope Titan.
Yeah, I don't think. So the third sister Reva, I don't remember her in Rebels.
She wasn't there.
Rebels? Yeah,
no,
wasn't
she's a new character they just created now, which is one of the things I'm skeptical about, unless they explain it well, is the fact that she knew that Anakin was Vader.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah,
if you read any of the comics or see any of the extended stuff on Vader's like what happened preceding Order 66 when Vader is kind of like going on a hunting Jedi and doing all this other stuff, anyone that even thinks they know that he is Anakin Skywalker, he kills immediately.
Right.
Like there's a scene where
That's
he's
canon.
hunting Jocasta, which Jocasta is the old white lady that was the librarian of the Jedi Temple. They capture her, and she tells all the stormtroopers in the little ship with them, like, yeah, you're following this guy, but he's a ex-Jedi, da da da. Vader immediately, without saying a word, kills every stormtrooper in the ship. Kills him immediately. He does not want people to know that he's Anakin Skywalker. Right. So the fact that she knows that and she's alive and she's trained underneath Vader, I'm like, all right, we got to have some form of explanation. Maybe she saw Anakin during the Order 66 Temple execution, or I don't know. For him to be cool with her knowing that, we got to have a really good explanation for that, because he holds that secret really hard.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. It does, because it had a bizarre mixed feelings. We're jumping all over the place here, but real quick, at the end of the second episode, when Reva, or the third sister, whatever, she stabs out the Grand Inquisitor. I'm pretty sure he's still alive, because he is. We see other footage of him. Also, he's in Rebels, which is 6 years later, whatever. But it almost seems like she knows the thing about Anakin being Darth Vader, and the Grand Inquisitor doesn't. Yeah. And it almost seems like she's specifically there on his for Anakin, more so than anybody else is. She knows more than any of the Inquisitors do.
What it could be, though, is what they alluded to with her earlier, how the Grand Inquisitor talked about the only reason you're here is because of your abilities. And we saw her use an ability that not a lot of people use in Star Wars, was the ability to like read minds, like forcefully take out memories from people. Kind of what Kylo Ren did with I think Poe and the new trilogy that they did.
Yeah.
So she has that. So maybe she was able to use it on Vader without him knowing. But even then, I find that hard to believe, because Darth is fucking Vader.
No, it's an interesting situation. And what I'm hoping against hope is that you're right, that one of the younglings was her. I'm not sure why they got spared. Why Vader would spare, or the troopers would spare her. That makes no sense
for the Inquisitor program to capture them, because Vader at that point. So what Palpatine and Vader had like this initiative to. Vader didn't start the initiative. Palpatine started the initiative to capture and turn Jedi, or find new Jedi younglings to turn them to the dark side. So
that was Order 66, though. Order 66 was execution.
Yeah, during right preceding that, he started this program.
Because
Vader trained all the Inquisitors are trained by Vader.
Palpatine forced they're his squad. Yeah, they're his squad.
Right. Which if you again, this is just some more gems for people that don't know in regards to Starkiller from the Force Unleashed. Vader kind of half-ass trained all the Inquisitors. He made them comparable to fight, but he didn't really give them all the information they needed to be as strong as they could be because he didn't want to do it. It was something that Palpatine made him do because Palpatine, another good reason why he stopped using the clones, he stopped caring as much about the strength of people and kind of wanted to form a army in number. He wanted to win everything by war of attrition. Just I'm gonna have more like this mass numbers of my army than anybody else.
Yes.
Which is why he started going about recruiting people that weren't clones or just regular people from all around the universe to be clone troopers.
Right. Also, because this is during the time when Vader was, of course, was always trying to think about having a coup, or he wanted.
Yeah, him and Palpatine had a scuffle because he was like, "You were supposed to say Padme." He's like, "You fucked that up for yourself." I didn't. It was a whole thing. But
yeah,
at this point in time, Vader. That's why Vader usually, like, you'll see Inquisitors with like a limb missing or an eye missing because they'll like cut off one of the limbs to make them understand the pain and kind of get them angry. He's just like fast tracking their training so he wouldn't have to worry about them at all.
And they actually have a callback to that in I think it's the first episode where Reva, the third sister, cuts off the hand of one of the when she's questioning all the townspeople trying to figure out where Obi-Wan is, and she cuts a hand off of one of the townspeople, kind of a thing like that.
Right.
Similar to it. Yeah.
Which I believe that on that scene you spoke on in the beginning, as far as the opening Order 66 scene, I believe they're going to flash back to that in the next episode. I think the next episode or next two are going to be all about Vader, now that we've seen him. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be like a bunch of flashback scenes of like him reliving stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe it's deleted scenes from the movies that we never get to see, or new reshoots they do with him aging him down or something like that. I don't know, but I'm excited. Like, just all the shit we just talked about in general that Vader did with the Inquisitors, we're going to get to see some of that. I get to see him just be ruthless again. I'm like, oh man.
Well, let's talk some more about actually, because it gets your take on. I guess we can go in someone in order from the first episode.
All right.
So we talked about Order 66, but moving from Order 66 when it actually does start showing in modern time, and the first time you see Obi-Wan, how did you feel about the first time you actually saw Obi-Wan?
I really love Obi-Wan. One thing I really love that they're doing, they're being very much so loyal to their source material. What people may not know, when it comes to Jedi don't just get physically weaker in the Force over time as they get older. What happens is if you don't use it, it's like a muscle, it atrophies if you don't use it. So that's why Obi-Wan is significant. Like he says it, I'm not the same Jedi that I used to be, because he's significantly weaker because he did not touch or use the Force at all for 10 years straight because he had to hide. Right. So seeing him like be rusty with stuff, rather that's him like tracking people down or getting into a physical confrontation, seeing that was like great to me. I love seeing the development with him, showing that he he got really narcissistic in a sense. He just
narcissistic,
not narcissistic, pessimistic, my bad, I'm sorry. Yeah, pessimistic in like his viewpoints on the Order 66 and all the stuff that was going on. It was just dope. I think they did an immaculate job at introducing him and updating you on where his mindset was at that point in time and going forward.
Right. By the way, we apologize for the gameplay footage. I'm not sure what the screen is.
Lag. So, I'm working on it now.
So choppy. But yeah, that was the highlight of the series for me so far, was just seeing really seeing Obi-Wan, because ewan McGregor is such a great actor, seeing Obi-Wan really genuinely hurting, seeing him in pain, seeing him just like and this is 10 years later, and he's just like, I am an outcast. To be reduced to that, to be reduced to just a man hiding from everything, to basically he's stealing those scraps of food from his job, and he's almost nothing. To see him put down that, it's heart-wrenching.
Right. And I love showing like the routine that he was in regards to like stealing the meat every time.
Yeah.
Or like showing how that was just like dreary, like depressing, and where his mindset was during that whole thing. Yeah.
Now again, this is one of my negatives I had with the show, was that it kind of did it a bit much. Like we went through the cycle. I think it was like 3.5 times. It's kind of like the Star Wars, they love themselves some deserts, and deserts are not fun to be in. Let's take a break until we get the footage straight.
Yeah, we'll just let it load up. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'll get it. But deserts aren't fun to be in. So seeing the desert used over and over and over again, it's kind of like, all right, we get the idea. Obi-Wan's struggling. We don't have to see so much of the same cycle as much, but I guess that's a nitpick, but yeah.
I enjoy what they're doing with it now. I think the desert again initially with the original stuff where we all know George Lucas's faults that he has when it comes to writing and script writing and screenplay writing and all the other stuff. But with this one, I feel like they're doing a really good job at making the environment of the desert just so you understand the dreariness of it in particular, if that makes any sense.
It
Like
does,
you get
but
to see the day to day of like how everybody's just so damn depressed in this area versus I
true.
feel like in the original trilogy when you're going to Mos Eisley and all that other stuff, it felt a little bit more jovial to me. Like when you're in bars and cantinas and stuff, it
Sure.
didn't feel as like depressing as it should be with all the slavery and all the poverty going on.
You mean this version or the in previous
The
iterations?
previous version, like the one
Okay,
in
I
A New
see.
Hope, when you're going through all
Yeah,
that whole stuff.
yeah. I think one thing that's fair. The problem with it was like Stranger Things came out this week too.
Mhm.
So, and I know I'm pretty sure Disney has just as much money as Netflix does. The way it was shot, the way it was lit, the overall kind of cinematography of it, it just seemed almost bright. It seemed almost
Mhm.
flat and colorful. It didn't have any heft to it, so it didn't seem like Obi-Wan was dirty or grimy. If you've seen the episode 7 when you're seeing Rey and she's cleaning her parts and she's running around scavenging for stuff, it feels dirty and grimy and slimy and bad. Seeing
Mhm.
this, it seemed very bright and clean in a way, so it kind of took away from the atmosphere of, oh my gosh, this man is suffering. And I kind of wish they actually had that, showing more of the people being dirty. I mean, they're in the desert, they shouldn't be super veneered, you
Right.
know.
Well, I think everybody else except Obi-Wan was, which I
I don't
think
know.
that could play a part into the fact like we see that he still has tendencies of like he has Jedi tendencies or just
Jedi
tendencies to be
tendencies.
him, which you see that in the fact that he bought a whole toy to give to Luke for him to kind of just like see that there's more out there than just the sand and stuff. Like he still has like he has his tendencies that he wants to call back to every now and then,
But
even down the
yes,
wanting to train Luke and stuff like that.
but wouldn't that be a problem? You're saying he still has his tendencies. If his tendencies are to stand out and be that much more hygienic or clean or whatnot than any other people that are running around there, that would cause more that put more eyes on him. That would call more attention to him. So if
Mm.
he is, that much cleaner than anybody else and is noticeable, that'd be a problem too.
I don't think you would
But
call it.
again, it's a nitpick just of mine,
Yeah,
I guess, what I'm seeing. So, but it's a my soul.
yeah, I'm with you on that one. Which you can make that work in different ways or explain it in different million ways to kind of make it make sense. But I see where you're coming from with that one as well as how it's weird. It's a weird thing with that. I guess we can get into the thing that you hated the most. I feel like when it comes to these two episodes and being Leia,
Yes, go.
I found her to be a little entertaining, honestly. I thought it was interesting because we talked about in the trailer breakdown when I talked about how I did not want to just see a repeat of something that we already know.
Mhm.
Like we know what he was doing the entire time he was there,
Yeah.
but I forgot that he did have some form of experience with Leia beforehand because in the New Hope when she contacted him, she knew him by the full name. She had already had some kind of familiarity with him, and
Right.
then they never had a scene together in the original trilogy.
They did not. They did not. And they
So it
did
was
and they
yeah.
and Leia, they didn't, obviously, in the prequels. She was a baby, so it doesn't count.
Mhm.
So there would have to have been something to something in this would have to have shown that they actually had some kind of relationship or connection. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
It was
agree.
interesting.
So I actually enjoyed, and it actually made sense. Like, yeah, when they as soon as he showed up, I was like, okay, that makes sense that he would have that they would know each other somehow during this series. It'd be much more
Mhm.
impactful. So I get that. I'm on board for that. I'm not at all opposed to her being in the show. I think that makes sense too. And of course, anytime you get to see Jimmy Smits himself as her dad, he
Mhm.
always brings it. He always does a great job. I love that. It was just that the casting, that little girl it just didn't work. And the way they wrote her, and it may be more so the way that they wrote her than the way
Mhm.
that she actually, her personality or whatnot. It just didn't work for me. It just didn't
See,
work
I
for me.
liked her. I thought from what I remember seeing from the original trilogy, like her personality versus Carrie Fisher's personality seemed very like that sassiness and that quick rebuttalness. The scene I enjoyed the most was them kind of foreshadowing her force sensitivity and speaking to her cousin and how like she just read her cousin through the force a lot and kind of went on this kind of small soliloquy and like breaking down her cousin's insecurities, his fears, what he hates, and all that other stuff. I don't know. I like the little girl. I think she
Yeah,
did. I think she did a good
that
job.
scene
To
that
me.
scene worked. I think that scene worked. The one you're talking about with her cousin when they're at the dinner or whatnot.
Mhm.
Yeah, because he starts off by saying you're not even a real Organa, you're adopted or whatnot, or
Right.
implies she's adopted. Yeah, I think that scene worked. And like that actual scene that followed with her and her dad. That was good stuff. But once I think part of it too is the directing. It's just like what is going on here. That chase scene where Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers and
Which
his
one?
squad.
Oh, I was about to say this. There's a lot of chasing. I will say that she has too many chase scenes where she can get away from full grown men.
Yeah,
One
and
being a
they're
Jedi Knight.
yeah, one being a Jedi Knight. It's like what? And
Granted,
they're
she's force sensitive, but I'm like not to that
not
extent. Like,
really, because I mean,
yeah.
also the whole force sensitivity. I mean, if you think about it, really, the force, her actually using the force, didn't come until much later on. Really, she has no
No,
idea what she's
she
doing with
used it
it.
a lot during. So if in the comics or whatever else throughout the extended universe, she has a lot of moments where like she'll be sensitive to the force and do things, but she'll kind of like turn away from it. She won't like
Yeah. Now
go fully
here's the
into the
thing
training
though.
for it.
This is Disney, right? In the world of
Mhm.
Disney, they've said all extended universe stuff is no longer lore or no longer canon.
Not yet.
So I don't
There's
even
some stuff they created their own original comics, not original comic.
did
Well,
Disney.
they're original, but Disney created because it's under Marvel and Disney, the
Right.
comics.
So do they have? I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like the Leia lore of her using the
Yeah,
force, was that in the Marvel Disney
yeah.
comics?
All
Okay.
all that stuff, like that's any of the content that had to do with the original trilogy is still canon. The stuff that they made not canon was like the Old Republic stuff, anything before that in that whole era.
And a
That's
lot, I
not
know that like a
canon.
lot of Dark Horse comics and stuff were, because like that's where Thrawn was in some of them too. He's in books as
Mhm.
well. They got rid of all that stuff officially. They said that's no longer canon.
Well,
That's
now they're about to bring it back in their own
they
way.
got
Which,
yeah,
like,
their own
yeah.
way. So maybe that's the whole murky waters there. But her being force sensitive, that's fine. I get that. I
Mhm.
think what it was, just based off of what I'm seeing here, based off of the show here, there's a part later on. We're jumping around again. I apologize for that. But in episode 2, there's a scene where after Obi-Wan saves her, after he saves her, he tells her how he's there for her father and every these things. And then she, using her force, I guess, is like, no, you're lying. I don't trust you. And she runs off. Not only does she run off, she runs off right into danger again.
Right.
And not only that, but the chase scenes are terrible. It's
They're
like
annoying. I ain't gonna lie.
because she's so small, she's maybe what, I don't know, 2 feet tall. So she has
Gotta
to run
be.
across the rooftops, and the rooftops had to be very, very close together so that she could actually jump across them. It's like this isn't intense. This isn't funny. It's just it's staged and looks bad. It looks poor. So watching that
I
stuff,
get a chase scene initially with her, like when on the first meeting, but she has way too many chase scenes in just the 2 episodes that she was. But
yes,
it's the one. Shit, I think all of them are in that one episode, right?
there's 2. So there's one in the first episode where she gets captured by Flea,
Right.
and then there's the
Okay.
second one, the climax, quote unquote, in the second episode is a chase scene where they're running across the
Got you.
rooftops, and then she falls. Her little dumbass falls, and Obi-Wan has to use the Force to save her.
All right.
So there's a few, and again, it may be that I soften up to her over time, but as of right now, I'm like, nah, this little chick is pissing me off, to be honest. So
Yeah, I will say that. Like a lot of her scenes started to get very dragged out and annoying. I think they're just because they're trying to establish like this is Leia. Everybody loves Leia.
everybody
Here's
loves
more
Leia.
Leia.
Here's more Leia.
Which they did the same thing with the movies, which again is another foreshadowing to like her force sensitivity and her abilities in the new trilogy, where she literally like force floated and levitated in space to
Right.
another ship or whatever else.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, obviously Star Wars is a big thing. I don't know how huge the fandom of Leia is, but they acting like it's like a huge thing because they're just showing as
Sure.
much of her as they can.
Yeah, and I understand from I get it. It is, and also we have to acknowledge Deborah Chow, who is the director of this, overall director of the series. I get it that Leia is an icon and a hero, especially for female fans of the series. It's for the fans in general, but female fans especially. She's a legend. I get that. And Carrie Fisher is worthy of praise, no doubt,
R.I.P.
no doubt. R.I.P. The late great. So I see why they're using so much of her. And again, like we said, in canon wise, it makes sense where they actually have Leia in this story. It all tracks. My gripes are just purely, and it's maybe just more my stuff than anybody else's. It's just the casting and the way they're using her so far. I mean, having her, the whole basically it almost feels forced. They were trying to have, almost a way separate Leia from Obi-Wan after he rescued her, essentially by making her run away for a long time, and to have him actually have to get chased by Reva, and then and there are other bounty hunters too briefly that popped in there, and having to use his force to save her. So it's all those things. And now she does have good moments. Like you mentioned, the scenes from the episode 1, those were good. Even the part where after she stops running from him, and it's before they get on board that ship, there's a part where Obi-Wan says, "You remind me of someone." She was stubborn. He's describing, of course, her mother.
Padme.
Yeah,
But some people
Padme.
thought he was talking about Satele, Sean, which I was like, all right, I can see it. I can see it either way.
Yeah. That's true. I think it's more likely probably her mom.
It's probably
Makes more
Padme,
sense.
yeah.
Or maybe both. Maybe
It
both.
makes more
But
sense being Padme.
makes more sense with his mom. Yeah. So I get that. So I'm hoping against hope that it does have that she does kind of that I soften up to her. I mean, if y'all remember this back in the day, Ahsoka. Remember Ahsoka in the very first season of Clone Wars? She was hated. There are all kinds of letters saying, "Get rid of this character. What are you doing with her? She's terrible."
So I
And
don't
now
get
she's
why.
literally, yeah. I mean, when she was Snips and everything. People hated Snips, but now she's one of the most widely regarded, most beloved characters in all Star Wars. So it's
I think she's a lot of people's favorite character, including myself.
yeah. She's
People
one of my
love
favorites of all
Ahsoka
time.
Tano
So.
now.
Yeah, they love her now. But you remember back in the day, they did not love Ahsoka at all. They hated
I
her.
didn't know that because when I got into it, again, I was very young, so I was not on any kind of like internet forums or rooms or groups to know like the atmosphere around the character, the climate around her. I loved her from the jump. I thought it was cool as fuck.
But also look at her personality. If you look at her personality in the first season, or because she first came out of that movie, there's a movie, like a Clone Wars movie that came out, animated movie, and then look at how she was in the first season, and then look at how she is, like later on in the show. Is two different personalities almost in a way. So it's
growing up and having all the adversity of being in a war for like your entire adolescence damn near. I'm like, yeah.
But that's fine. I mean, I'm on board for that. I'm not leaving. I'm not gonna stop watching the show. I'm definitely gonna stick around.
Funny thing though that I'm excited about, and I kind of hope happens to some extent. This game in particular, if you look at the trailer for the second game, I believe takes place 5 years after the events of this game, which will put us directly in the time period we are now with Obi-Wan. So there's a possibility we can see Cal Kestis make an appearance, even more so because we know that the character of this game is based off of the actual actor. So like you can just literally just have him phase in and out of movies, and I don't know, it'd be dope to see him pop up to some extent.
So you're saying the actual actor playing Cal Kestis now could possibly appear in Obi-Wan Kenobi the show?
No, this character Cal Kestis.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he did. That makes sense because they've done that kind of stuff before already. Having Luke essentially appear in Mandalorian season 2 and stuff. So
yeah, it'd be cool as hell to see just a video game character make an appearance in the shows and movies. And then go back to the games. I think that's a concept that I could see Marvel doing going forward.
True, but also what that opens the doorway to is having Obi-Wan Kenobi appear in Fallen Order 2. It's not called Fallen Order 2, but the next game in the series.
For me, I'd like to see like a DLC or another Obi-Wan game taking place during his younger days or during the Clone Wars, or another Clone Wars game. This type of game in general, I love to see more characters put in this scenario, or just an exploration type game where you're exploring and going through a story.
Yeah, I agree. That'd be dope. Now, one thing I wanted to talk to you about too is because we're seeing the Inquisitors now. I know none of these are Reva or the Grand Inquisitor just yet, but in the show, I like the Grand Inquisitor. The introduction where he shows up at the bar, he pretty much is kind of reminding me of the opening scene in Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards, where you have Christoph Waltz's character where he interrogates that guy. He seems very friendly and polite and stuff. Like it seems like he's there to be their friend. And he tells about what the Jedi are. The Jedi are hunting themselves because they always have to be the good guys no matter where they are. I actually like that scene a lot, and I like the idea that essentially has where a person, I think it's Reva, throws a knife at the guy he's talking to, and a Jedi uses their force to stop the knife. So I like that scene there. Where the scene fell apart, though, for me was when, again, no offense to her, the actor, that person playing the third sister, her acting isn't quite as sharp, and she seems very one note. And when it just seems she's playing a little hard, running too hard in the paint. How did you feel about that scene overall, though? How did you feel about that?
I loved it a little bit more than probably a lot of people did because I watched the Rebels and I loved that the Grand Inquisitor was like a big part of Rebels, and seeing how he manipulated situations and the elegance that he carried himself with is very Dooku-esque.
Yeah.
Even more so with, if you read the comics, like he sees himself as an intellectual, and he like not only wants to kill Jedi, but he wants to like mock Jedi and their teachings, and the again, like you said, he would like look at the text and the like all that stuff. Like, and you saw it to an extent when he's like going like walking you through the Jedi Order and how Jedi think and things of that nature. Like he's very much so a student of that.
Yes.
So I thought that whole monologue was dope.
Agreed.
Because if you notice, like it's what I really liked. If you notice, like he spots the Jedi really early on. Like he knows who it is.
Yeah. They showed the camera
He's
points to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
what he's doing is he's goading the third sister into doing some stupid shit, so
So
he
you
can
think
embarrass
so you
her.
think he's goading the third sister into doing something dumb?
Yes, like there's no other reason to not. At least in my head, I'm like, you already know where the Jedi is, but you continue to drag it out because you know that she's really anxious and angsty to gain more power. Like all the other Inquisitors know that they
So
don't like her
why would he want to goad her into doing something stupid?
because they want a reason to get rid of her. They don't like her because she was originally a Jedi.
But don't they have
Originally.
enough? Do they need more reason to do that? Couldn't they just? I mean, if you're in power, couldn't you just say, yeah, you're gone?
I'm assuming not for the fact that she knows who Vader is. I'm assuming her and Vader have some kind of connection.
But I
Which
wonder if they know that she's Vader's favorite or has some kind of special connection with Vader.
they know she's favored. They talked about it, like how she gained ranks really quickly because of her
They
abilities.
do talk about that. That's true.
And because the fact that she can draw information out of people very quickly makes her invaluable to Vader hunting Jedi going forward. So she's damn near untouchable.
That's possible. Yeah, that's definitely possible. My take was maybe they're still trying to, as opposed to goading her, they're trying to test her to actually show, because they actually say they want her to show more patience, to be more involved with the team, because the thing is, it doesn't benefit them for her to be fucking up their searches. How would that help them at all to do those kind of things? Because then also what they said they're trying to deliberately goad her. Once he tries to run and she uses the lightsaber, they stop it, as opposed to letting her do the thing, as opposed to letting her completely sink herself. So I feel like that's why, regardless of what it's actually her intentions are, it's a little unclear and it's kind of a messy.
So you got to remember the nature of the Sith and how they operate. They're not doing the rule of two anymore, but just the rule of two alone. The whole purpose of the rule of two is that you teach your Padawans and your Sith acolytes as much as you can without telling them everything. But the whole purpose is that as they're getting stronger, they're looking for the first instance they can to get more power for you. Like the Sith is always like backhanded compliments, being slick. Like everything is just figuring out a way so they can get more power than you.
Right.
Especially when it comes to getting more favor from Vader and Palpatine.
Yeah.
With them in particular. So the way I saw it was literally just the fact of they know she's anxious. They know that she has favor with Vader, and they need a reason to fuck her up and kill her. Which is with the Obi-Wan thing. That's why Vader has made it very much known that he is the only one that's going to kill Obi-Wan. So that's why they're not even risking looking for Obi-Wan like that.
Okay.
That's why she's so
that's another thing too.
So she can gain favor.
So who were they looking for?
They're just another random Jedi that they had a report for.
So the thing is that random Jedi shows up. So why is he let that? So then the Grand Inquisitor lets him go. He runs out.
Yeah, it's a cat and mouse thing. They're like, the Sith like to torture, if anything else.
So
you saw they killed him at something. You saw they killed him at.
They do catch him and kill him later on, and it's a ways later. The thing is, that's another thing that's kind of like the plot. The writing doesn't make sense in that regard. They go there to looking for a Jedi. They find the Jedi. Then they have the Jedi there. Reva, in this sense, essentially is right. She's like, yeah, here's a Jedi. Let's go and kill him. Kill this Jedi. And the Grand Inquisitor stops her. The guy runs off. Then later on that night, we see we see that same Jedi talking to Obi-Wan. If they actually wanted to, they could have followed him to Obi-Wan. They didn't do that. Then the next day or so, what have you? Then they of course kill that Jedi. So what was the point?
It's a fun thing with them. Like if you look, especially in Rebels, they'll do that a lot. Where they'll let people run away so they can go hawking down for fun and sport. Even more so because there's not a lot of Jedi around. They talk about it initially with her and him how they're scarce and there's not a lot there.
But what I remember in Rebels was they still would at least fight them. They would confront them. And they would oftentimes have to escape, especially with Ahsoka and obviously the Calder. They would have to fight them. They wouldn't be just like let's stop. Someone wouldn't stop them and let them run off to wherever they want to go. That would defeat the purpose. So it did seem. And again, if anyone's watching this, if anyone that hasn't seen all kinds of Rebels and read all the comic books watching this, they're probably lost watching this show. That's what I mean. That's not a
that's why when I told you before, all this makes sense if you're familiar with all the content, this to me feels like what Marvel's doing now in regards to a lot of the characters they're bringing in, a lot of the concepts they're introducing, a lot of the stuff they're making it painted towards fans of their content and everybody else. Because I feel like they know at this point that people are going to watch just because of the IP. So they're trying their best to be loyal to fans and the content. But again, I've seen the Grand Inquisitor do this a million times over in Rebels. He didn't start fighting it wasn't on site initially. It got on site once it got personal because
but there was always a purpose. He always had a purpose with them. He would either he would taunt them and tease them, yes, but he would. Oftentimes, it would be a confrontation, or there'd be some kind of a. It would be clear what his motive was. Like if he went into a bar looking for a Jedi in particular, and he found that Jedi, he wouldn't just let him run off without actually knowing it. Like for example, if they had shown them following him later on towards Obi-Wan, that would make perfect sense.
That's what I thought.
And that's what they were going to do, but they didn't do that. So
No.
it's
they want a confrontation. Like if you don't fight back, they won't. Like they want to fight because they're getting trained to hunt Jedi, and there aren't that many Jedi left. They want confrontation. So if you don't fight back, they just torture you.
I guess so. But regardless of what it is, it just didn't.
What up, Craig?
You what, Craig? Good to hear from you, brother. But it didn't work for me. And you mentioned the idea of how obviously they know the fan base or they're playing towards the fan base with the MCU. They still make it accessible to fans who obviously do not know the comic books, haven't seen the cartoon shows, that kind of stuff. It didn't seem if their plan is to be much more, niche or esoteric with the content with this. That's a risk. You don't want to do that necessarily. There's so much content, so much more out there. Because there's
the fan base being so big, I don't see it as a risk when you know that you're. Again, this is one of the bigger IPs in the history of cinema.
Yes.
Like people even with how many people consume the extended content. Like people know about this. It's just there's the casual fan just won't know. Same thing with Marvel and introducing like Gore the God Butcher or the All Black Necro Sword or Celestials or the Eternals. They know there's a large fan base that knows the IP because it's one of the bigger IPs to ever be made. But they already know there's like a big casual. Like people, what do? They go watch New Rockstars, whatever other videos on YouTube to break it down for them. They don't.
But not everyone does that. I mean, a lot of families that own Disney Plus, they're not going to hit up New Rockstars or hit up the internet to try and understand these things. If they're just watching the show in real time, they're not going to have time to do all these things. There are plenty of people. You and I are younger guys. We're not younger, but you and I do not have families. We don't have a whole bunch of kids. We don't have a whole bunch of jobs that are demanding as far as limiting our time to the nth degree. Most folks do. Most folks like, I have a half hour. I'm gonna watch this show right now. That's it. And if it's like confusing as hell and has like you need to do a whole bunch of homework and research beforehand and afterhand, they're like, what the fuck? So
they do it. I'm going off of what I've seen. Like me again with my roommate or my boss and people like that. They'll watch the shows and if they had no people, like they'll ask me about certain stuff and I'll tell my roommate. But then I'll literally watch this man in front of me go watch a New Rockstars video and want to talk to me about it, or I'll see my boss. Like again, New Rockstar, there are millions of views on their channel for a reason.
Right. But that's in our bubble, though. That's in our bubble as far as people who are doing that. My parents, also my actual family, they wouldn't do this. My sister, she wouldn't do this. These are people who are fans of the movies. Most people that are fans of Star Wars, my best friend back home, Susan, they're fans of the movies. They've seen the movies and they've been watching the other shows like Mandalorian and whatnot. But they're not going to do a whole bunch of. They wouldn't even know where to go to get the research for this type of stuff. So I don't think it's fair to expect people to do the research. I don't think it's fair to expect people to have seen, hundreds of episodes of these cartoons or the other shows either.
To me, I see it. The reason I don't care as much because for me, when it comes to stuff like this, when you originally created the content, you didn't originally create Star Wars to be appealing to everybody. You created it in your vision to be something that you thought was dope, and from there you created it with your own vision. If you go about and trying to make everything super, not processable is what I'm looking for, very accessible, and like for everybody can see it, I think that takes away the allure. Now you're making very generic content in my eyes. But if you're going through and you're pulling out information, what's up, Nish?
But the best part is her name is That's So Niche. We're talking about niche right now. All right. But how you doing? Good to see you.
I look at it like the MCU, right? People did not know Iron Man. They thought Iron Man was a robot for a lot of time. But over time, people just figured it out. They watched.
They didn't just figure it out though. That's what I'm saying, Deb. They in the movies gave the context they needed for people to know these things. They didn't just have Iron Man show up in a movie and people have no idea who he was. That's what I mean. Is the show is responsible for making things accessible to whoever's watching it. That's
Appreciate it, Craig. Not even so much like with, I won't say it's like, again, like with the origin story for the MCU with Iron Man. Yeah, they showed his origin story.
Yeah, show his origin story.
But showing characters like Gore, showing like they're creating. There's a reason that the comics got revamped to match the movies because people went through and went back and they're consuming this content now.
Yeah.
Like the content from that, they're putting the animated series on Disney Plus now. People are watching that. Like people are going back. If you're fans of it and you become a fan of it, you're gonna go back. Like we talked about it with our YouTube channel. If somebody watches one of our videos and they're a fan of one of our videos and they want to see more of us, they're going to go back and binge watch everything that we've ever made up until that point. So
But
now they're
that's
caught up.
also that right there is an unreasonable ask. Like if you're gonna for say, hey man, you like this? Go back and rewatch everything we ever did. It's like, whoa, I would never want them to do that. I mean, that's ridiculous. That's,
With binge watch culture though, with Netflix, like there's a whole people binge watch stuff more than anything.
They
now.
do. They of course people do, but I don't think I personally do not feel it's a fair ask because people have so much stuff that they're trying to do. They have lives. So if you're saying this, essentially, if you're saying we're making this content and the only people who can watch this content are those who've seen a whole bunch of other content beforehand, you're going to lose an audience. It should be accessible to anyone that wants to watch it. That's the point of things. Like The Mandalorian, that show, The Mandalorian, it wasn't like you had to watch all the Satine's adventures in Rebels in order to enjoy it. It was pretty much like you come into The Mandalorian fresh and you can enjoy it as is. You know what I mean?
That's a caveat due to the fact that the Mandalorian himself is an original character that doesn't have a long history. When you have somebody like Obi-Wan Kenobi, whose history branches out over just in the canon, like almost over 60. He died at like 60, something like that.
He died.
And he's been a Padawan, had his own adventures there. He has extended universe stuff where he was when he was a Jedi Knight, and then there's the Clone Wars. He has such a long history with a million different characters. I don't know how you go about combining. And it'd be one thing if it was like a revamp of Obi-Wan, but they're continuing from the prequel stuff and what everybody knows. Because I'm pretty sure the movies didn't exist, they revamp them, but people have a familiarity with the movies.
Right.
So I don't know how you can go about like, hey, let's introduce this character, but let's make all the things that this character's been through in regards to his development and all his relationships, but let's make that accessible for people that have never seen Star Wars or don't know what this character is. Well, I think if people care enough to know about this character, they're going to go do their research. If not, they just won't watch the show.
Fair, and that's fair. But that's the problem. You don't want people just to stop watching your show. But I'm not asking them to. What I'm saying is, I'm not expecting them to dive into every detail about Obi-Wan, give it a whole backstory about Obi-Wan, or give a whole dissertation on everything made Obi-Wan what he is over all these years. Not at all. What I'm saying is, make these characters' actions in the context in which they're doing them make sense. That's what I want to happen. You can't say, for example, you can't have a character walk on on screen, do something, or make an inside joke that only 5 people would get and expect it to work. Now, that they obviously didn't do something that extreme, but the actions that these characters are doing, these Inquisitors are doing, sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And you're explaining it to me is like, okay, I guess that's what they're going for. But even then, we don't know that's actually how it is. We're assuming that's what it is based off of your information. And again, we spent way too much time on this. I mean,
I think this is a great conversation to have about it because this is something that they're going to be doing going forward. I feel like,
yeah, I hope so.
Especially with stuff like this game, they're going to be making. I think they're going to make a lot more content when it comes to Star Wars. A lot. I think it's more of a thing of like, let's say like with then and now, right? Let's say we have 20 fans, and these 20 fans are going to support us no matter what.
Right.
We can make a living. Let's say these 20 fans donate $100 a month for our Patreon, but now we've blown up and we have 2 million fans now. I can't then go about and making my content not geared towards the people that have supported me from the beginning because there are a bunch of new fans on. If they want to enjoy it, they're going to jump in and enjoy it from like everybody else did initially. They're going to go back and rewatch that stuff.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I definitely see what you're saying, but that's the line you have to walk, is being able to be. You had to almost have your foot in 2 areas, to have both feet in the past and one foot in the present at the same time. You had to have it so you are still accessible to your old fans, and you actually are still doing inside jokes or whatnot to your old fans, of course, in respecting them. I get that entirely, but you do have to be. What you always want is growth. You know how important growth is for any business dev. You want to be able to make sure that new fans come on board. They're not lost. They're not like kind of like so in the dark. They have no idea what's going on, that they want to leave. You want to be able to be fun for those, keep those who have been with you, keep them involved, and keep them feel like they're part of it, but also make it so that people that are coming on board want to stay there. If they feel like if it's such a inside baseball thing. I've watched those kind of shows before on the internet, and I've watched those kind of movies and everything else. I'm like, no, forget this. This show One Piece, for example. One Piece has over 1,000 episodes, and the reason that it's losing some of its like in the recent years, I guess over the past year or so, like Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen have overtaken it as far as the number one selling mangas because it's so inaccessible to new fans. However, Jujutsu Kaisen, Demon Slayer are much shorter series and a much quicker access. That's how it works. If you have something that's so hard to get into, you can't penetrate, you will lose fans. New fans. You'll
See,
lose new
I
fans.
think you're underestimating people's attention span a little bit. The prime example being again kind of what Craig talked about in regards to people's target audiences that he talked about earlier. Since we're in anime, we can break it down with anime. Dragon Ball. I think I agree with you on One Piece. I think One Piece is an extreme example for the fact they've been going on for a decade plus now and still haven't
No,
finished. But
no, over 20 years.
right,
Over
with
20 years.
something like Dragon Ball, for example, they're in Dragon Ball Super now, and we have even more now more than ever a lot of new anime fans that are getting into the anime. And again, like you said, Dragon Ball is going to be the first thing they get into. They're going to watch Dragon Ball Super or watch one of these movies and wonder what the hell is a Super Saiyan or who the hell a Frieza is, and they're going to go back and rewatch Dragon Ball initially, like all the hundreds of episodes originally that happened before this. They do that. I have a friend. I have a friend now that one of my good friends. She just got into anime, got introduced to Naruto with Shippuden, and she went back and rewatched everything from before because she loved it so much. If you like something, you're not going to have any issue binge watching stuff because you're a fan of it. If you're watching for a critique, maybe I see that point because you're critiquing something, you want everything compiled down to what you're watching right then. But if you're a fan of it, you're going to want to know every single part of it and go binge watch that.
Sometimes, and there are those who will. And again, there are those who have the time to do that, but there are plenty who do not. They just don't. They just don't. Yeah, I'm guessing your friend that did this. I'm guessing she doesn't have a whole bunch of kids. She doesn't have a job that forces
no, she's my age.
A week. Yeah, so she has the time to do that, but there are plenty of people who do not have the time. You brought Dragon Ball Super. Dragon Ball Super, yeah, it definitely resonated with lots of fans, but lots of those fans were already on board before. There weren't a whole bunch of new. I wonder how many new fans there were of Dragon Ball that jumped on board during Super. Most people probably jumped on board back during Dragon Ball Z. There wasn't anything.
I'd say it's enough for the fact that all these companies are making anime-oriented clothing. All the studios are buying up all the anime-centric stuff they can buy. Like you see, Netflix is developing a bunch of anime shows. Hulu's getting their stuff.
Yeah,
it's so many people are getting into it now more than ever that we know what's happening when the companies are trying to create more products based around that.
Right.
Right. To your point, I'd argue your point again in regards to people doing that. I feel like it's happened over the course of the last 60 plus years with Star Wars, especially for the fact that this IP started in the 90s, or it started in the 80s.
No, it started in the 70s. Started in
the 70s. This has been around since the 70s, and people there are still new fans. Like, look at me, I'm 22 years old, and I got onto this when it was like the prequel era, and went back and rewatched everything from games to movies to comics, and I'm my age.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people my age that are Star Wars fans and people that are within me and Otis's generation. Otis wasn't born in the 70s. He didn't grow up in the 70s. Right. You said you watched this when you were young when the original stuff came out.
Right.
There are new fans that come along as they're just pumping out more stuff. And a lot of those fans go back and rewatch and replay all the other stuff that came beforehand. Like if you're a Star Wars fan now, you've gone back and rewatched the original trilogy.
You're right. There are lots of people that do these type of things, and there are lots of like us. There are.
I think it's the majority to me, honestly.
I don't know. I mean, it may be. I am not sure. And the thing is, that's fine. There definitely are. There is a massive audience out there that really enjoys Star Wars content, that really is on board with doing these type of things. But they wouldn't even have to go back and watch these things. They've already watched them over the years. They've watched Clone Wars and Rebels and all these things like that. That's true. But there are still people who don't. I talked to people this weekend who didn't know who the Inquisitors were. They never saw the Inquisitors because they never watched Rebels. Right. I'm sorry, Rebels was the one that had the Clone Wizards. They never watched Rebels, and they never played this game, so they had no idea who the Inquisitors were. You may think that no one out there exists. If you're a Star Wars fan, you consume all the content. No, of course not. There are plenty of casuals who haven't done that. There are people who just getting into Star Wars watching these shows. So we have to be open to both lanes. That's all I'm saying.
Right. I'm open to them. I'm just saying, as far as me being a content creator, I want to be making my content for the people that were there from the start, that were fans of the stuff. Especially, it's working if people are coming on as time is going on.
Right.
Real quick, did the comments. Craig says, so Ethan, are you saying comics, TV shows, movies are their own separate thing, even though they all are under the universe like Marvel? Secondly, yes. I think to follow that up, he says, so the shows and cartoons, movies should be looked at as new, not something for the core fans such as comic readers.
No, those are two different things, two different questions. But I do think, going back to the first, if we're addressing the first question, Craig, I do think there are plenty of people who don't partake in everything. There are plenty of people who, just like for myself, for Star Wars, I have never read a single Star Wars comic book in my life. I've
Mm.
seen all. I think I've seen all the shows. I think I've seen all the movies. Obviously, I played some of the games. Now, there's a bunch of games I haven't played. There's a bunch of games even Dev hasn't played. There's
Mm.
so much content out there. And so, let's say, for example, they were to reference something specifically that's only in Knights of the Old Republic, the video
Right.
game. I would have no idea what that's from. I wouldn't get that inside joke. Wouldn't work for me because I haven't played that game. If they're referring to characters that are specifically only from the comic books, and they're referring to them in a way that is so exclusive that anything they're saying or doing is you would have to have read those comic books in order for it to make sense to you. I'd be lost. And if you think that I'm alone in that, you're wrong. There are plenty of people who
Right.
haven't had time to do all these things. And I'm not saying that there aren't fans who have done all these things. I'm sure there are plenty of fans who have read all the comic books, seen all the TV shows, played all the video games. I'm sure there are plenty of them. But I know from my own experience, from working, because right now I have a job where I work in marketing with a network,
Right.
and their job is to actually have how do we get more people involved with our product, with our IP. One of the biggest things is that you do not want to be exclusive. You want to be inclusive. You want to find a bridge between old fans and new fans, hardcore fans, like you're mentioning, Craig, as well as casuals, as well as new fans. So it works against you to have things to be so gatekeepy in a sense.
The one reason I don't care. Okay, this is probably the biggest reason in regards to that. When you look at the people that want more, if you have a casual fan, right? Like let's say when Obi-Wan and the prequel stuff bombed and people hated them, people were damn near like from the older generation, and they're bullying McGregor and
Yeah.
Christensen. They hated that with a passion.
Yeah.
They didn't care, and the IP would have died at that point if it were not for the original fans in forums, in making surveys, and like they want that content because they're a fan of that content. The real fans are going to support that content to get that content made. If they don't have that core fan base, Obi-Wan doesn't get made. Hayden Christensen
I
doesn't
agree.
come back.
I
So that's
agree.
why I'm like, I'm going to pander towards the people that give me high demand for it.
Thanks, Craig.
If,
Appreciate that.
if we made a certain type of, like,
yeah.
let's say we don't make loose cannon videos anymore, we don't do video essays. If
Yeah.
Craig is pleading and demanding for it, I know he's going to watch it because he's asking for it.
Yes.
With most casual fans, they're going to watch it. If they don't like it, they're not going to look at it ever again. Or even if they
Right.
like it, they're probably not going to watch it right then. No, wait months to years later when it's free or on some other platform they can watch it on, and not spend dollars at the box office to do it.
Right. No, I completely agree. Because the thing is, you and I we're mostly agreeing on this. It's just some of the fine splitting hairs on some details.
Right.
But you're right. Let's take Craig, for example. Craig's is by far our number one fan. We cannot alienate Craig. That's our job. We want to do our best to keep fans like Craig involved in what we're doing, because he's been with us since the beginning. He's a hardcore fan. He'll support us. And because he is our true blue fan, he'll be with us the rough times as well, like any Star Wars fan would be. But you also want to find a way to make more Craigs, make new Craigs, and find out what other people want. So that's the balance you have to walk when it comes to creating content and embracing, content's been around for a long time.
Right. And I think this is where we're splitting the hairs in the sense of creating new Craigs. And the way I'm seeing it, let other new Craigs be created how the original Craig was created, by finding us and then watching us, not creating the content and making it very accessible and like different for the new types of fans. It sounds like we're trying to create not two different types of fans, but we're going about creating new fans two different ways.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's not. I see what you're saying. Yeah, we're not trying to placate in an artificial way. That's true. And you are trying to stick to your guns about what the actual content you had. Yeah, I agree with that. I do. But you don't want to, in the process of being loyal to hardcore fans, alienate potential new fans either. That's all. You just want to do that. That's all.
Sure.
But yeah,
I see your point with that. I think there's no right or wrong thing. Again, obviously they're doing something right for the fact that we talked about how this IP has been around since the 70s, and they've gotten a plethora of video games, books, shows, music, also overabundance of products made out of this IP that started.
And if you think about that though, Dev, that's how they have gotten new fans, is through those means, is through the new games. Because for example, you and Otis will, not to call you guys out too much, but you aren't the biggest fans of the original trilogy. Or you accept them and whatnot, but they're not. Right. Your generation, those movies are a little less accessible to you because they obviously have dated effects and things of that nature. They you got on board during the time when they made I guess the Rebels cartoon and the prequels, more or less. That's how they got you. it's the same thing with like there'll probably be some fans that will come on board with Star Wars because of the Obi-Wan show or Andor or maybe Mandalorian, whatever it is. So that's how you get new fans by having new content that works for you. But the new content has to be enjoyable enough on its own basis for people to want to go back and do the research on things. If the new content itself is so patchworked or so inside baseball that people can't follow it, you will alienate them. I promise.
I think there's a caveat though with that being, even when I got into it, the era I got into it, they still had a lot of extreme tie-ins into the previous stuff, into the original trilogy. And Rebels specifically, they have like a moment in which there's this dimension, in like a time dimension where you go back and see and hear all the stuff from the original trilogy up until that point. So they have like it's always tying back into it. So they're giving you new original characters and new content, but there's always that callback and always that core information going back to the original stuff.
Right. And so, but
Craig
that
said-
example right there, there's episode. I know there was one episode where they did in particular. I remember in the Rebels. But the thing is, even with that, that's a perfect example of what I'm saying. Is you are doing both. You're bridging the gap between the new information and the old. That's something that would benefit any show or any movie or whatnot. Is if you are bridging the gap between, for the new fans, here's what's happening, new fans, but also this is what happened before, so you understand what it was we're drawing from.
Right. Which I get, but I think a lot of that's just to do with the fact that the stuff I was watching had original characters in it, so you didn't have to do it as much.
True.
Even with this game, I think that's therein lies the main issue with the Obi-Wan thing, is that he has such a deep, rich history in this universe and is one of the standout characters within it. You can't like. It's tough to like act like all the other decades of experiences he had and stuff like that would not play a huge part of him going forward. You can't really go forward without knowing where he came from.
Sure,
and I know where he came from, in which it's going to be tough to go about where he came from in a 6-episode series.
Yeah,
when you have like decades worth of history.
No, I agree with that entirely. I guess the thing is I do think the Inquisitors themselves got a pretty cool introduction. It's just like some like the way you're describing the way they're acting, they could have taken a moment or two to just kind of make it a little clearer for the audience. That's all.
Yeah, I see your point on that one. Because for me, like I don't see anything wrong with it at all. Because again, I've seen this ideology play out so much, and like they make it a point in other Sith stuff that if you're trying to gain power and you're worried about, because if it was up to the Grand Inquisitor, I'm pretty sure him and the third brother, or I think the 7th brother, I think is what his name is, they would have just killed Reva. They would have just killed her.
Yeah.
But they know that if they kill her, Vader's pissed, Palpatine's pissed. They need a good reason to dispose of her. They gotta set her up to where she dies on her own.
So that's one thing that you just said right there, and I agree with it. I'm pretty sure that's the thing. But it would have been. I don't think they mentioned that as much in the episode. In the context of the actual episode, I don't think they mentioned the idea of us. She's basically protected by Vader and Palpatine.
They discussed it briefly, like not to that exact stuff, but like when they talked about how you're only at this point because of your abilities.
Yeah, they mentioned that line. I remember that line.
Yeah, and from there we can see that Herb, again, if you watch the new stuff, we've seen that ability is only been used. The only other person I can think of that's had that ability is Kylo in the original stuff. So we know it's a rare ability, and we know how important it is with drawing information. Yeah. And for people that hunt Jedi for a living, and it's hard to find them because they're hiding, you need to be able to extract information from other people. So I can see Herb. It's a lot. Like again, you have to put together a lot of context clues with stuff.
But that's
they don't make that. I see your point with that. They don't make it very known that that's what's going on.
No, but I guess that's my own personal gripe with the content, is that they are requiring that much work on the people. It would have been a very easy throwaway line. They could have simply said, like for example, the part where they could have had any moment between the Grand Inquisitor and the guy with the hat. I guess that's the 7th brother. They could have had a moment where they said, for example, why does he favor her? Something like that. Anything, even though without even saying Vader or Palpatine, but they could have said something like, "Why does he favor her?" Something simple as that.
Right.
And then at the end of episode 2, when you see that, it's a great reveal. I love that part in episode 2. At the end of it, where you see Anakin in his with the is it Bantha or not Bantha, but Banka chamber? What's it called, Dev?
Back to tank.
Back to tank. Right. They could have shown that, and you would have been able to deduce, okay, the he they're referring to is of course Vader or whatnot. But they didn't even do that much. And what we're doing right now is we're almost, in a lot of ways, we're still assuming. We don't know this for certain, but we're assuming this is what's coming from. So all I'm saying is that a little bit of sharper writing would have benefited it. That's
Right.
all.
Right.
That's
I
all.
see your point. It's not the most perfect, right? I see your point there. Which we'll probably see a lot of that in this next 2 episodes that
I'm hoping for
I
it.
feel
Yeah,
like going to
I'm hoping
feature
for it.
Vader a lot more.
Yeah.
I don't see them bringing back Christensen and making it a point that it's like a public thing that he's going to be in him without giving him his
Right.
own like 2
Yeah.
episodes or own episode arc in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Because
Which
it's
they
only
did.
6 episodes, right? I think it's 6 for the season.
Yes, only 6
Yeah.
episodes.
He's
So they've
asking
changed,
time.
and they've already changed up some stuff. I believe, like in the comics,
Mhm.
Obi-Wan discovered Vader was still alive during. He had like a campaign on Endor. Was it Endor? I think it was Endor, where he was like going around killing Jedi there. And initially,
Oh,
I
word.
think the mission he had initially to get his saber, Palpatine
Mhm.
made him go kill and take the crystal of a Jedi that was already on Endor and corrupt it and bleed the crystal.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Because
Obi-Wan
that
finds
is different.
and that
Yeah.
campaign on Endor makes Vader like publicized throughout the galaxy then, and that's how Obi-Wan finds out.
Well,
But
because that's
they
that's
changed
the
it up.
thing that because in the episode 4, the New Hope, it's very much implied that Obi-Wan didn't know that Vader was or Anakin was still alive. So it's they've already changed up the lore, like you said, from based off the comic, and then also the idea that the Inquisitor just told him that he's still
Well,
alive.
in a New
So
Hope, he's always alive. I think in the New Hope, didn't they say that Vader killed Anakin? I thought that's what Obi-Wan told Luke.
yes, he does. He
Yeah, so
does tell.
he knows who he is. He just learns that they learned it, like, again, they're retconning to where he learned at this moment and not
Right.
during the news getting out that Vader was like still alive.
Right, and also it does seem like it's implied in episode 4 they haven't seen each other since the end of episode 3, more or less.
Mhm.
So, but it does seem likely that the way that they're handling this show, that they'll probably meet up in some way during this show.
Right.
They
Which
may not.
I don't know how that's gonna go. I think
Yeah.
there's an instance where they meet up, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
but
How you gonna pull that one. That's
I'm
gonna be
still
tough.
hopeful. I am still hopeful, Dev. I am still hopeful.
I need another scene of like almost like a Rogue where Vader just being Vader raw and uncut, because we have the technology now to show how strong. Because with the extended Legends universe, a lot of the Jedi and Sith in that universe are exponentially stronger because they're showing the Force in a lot more of they're using the Force in more powerful and creative ways than they do in the movies and other stuff.
Right.
Like that.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
the fact that we have the technology to show Vader doing that kind of crazy shit that he was doing in the comics and in that content, I'm like, I'm excited. I need to see more of that. Rogue was fire. That whole hallway scene is probably some of the best Star Wars content I've seen like the last 5 years to a decade that I've seen that they put out.
It's what everyone uses. It's the benchmark. It's like for live action, especially. That's the best like Vader scene. That's by far the best live action Vader scene we've ever seen.
Mhm.
So I'm hopeful that they will do that. I hope that they'll use that budget to do those kind of things.
Right.
I really am, because it's the first. Because think about this: all the other live action shows they've had for Star Wars on Disney Plus, they haven't really had Jedi doing that much. They had Luke at the end of Mandalorian season 2, and that was it primarily.
All right.
So yeah.
The only thing I'm worried about though is how they're going to be presenting Vader, because I doubt they brought in Christensen just to be under a helmet and act with James Earl Jones' voice being over that.
True.
And then I'm scared they're going to have him be without the helmet a lot.
They can't do that.
Even in the comics or in other content, people, if you just see him without his helmet on, he murders you on the spot. Vader plays no games about that shit. You cannot see him without his helmet on.
No, you can't. But also, he can't. He died. He's in such bad shape. He kind of needs his helmet on. It's not a matter of like.
Well, he doesn't have to have it on. He has to have it on to like fight and shit like that. But he can when he meditates, he doesn't have it on when he meditates.
No, yeah. He can't exist without it. But he can't like get into a serious, rigorous, hardcore fight, running around doing stuff like that's not going to work for him.
Oh, it depends.
But it's also you wouldn't bring Hayden Christensen back to have his face all messed up. I imagine they're gonna have some.
I see him talking to Obi-Wan a lot with it off. Maybe
that'd be weird though. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. Do you want that? Do you want to have a scene with him?
I mean, I wouldn't mind it since they started like that. They showed it in the prequels. I just don't know how you bring him back unless you change the voice and have him. But then like James Earl Jones is still alive and kicking. Why would you not have him reprise the role?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's the whole thing.
It's a whole thing. So that's a whole other discussion.
Craig, go ahead and shoot, man. Go ahead, let us know what the question is.
Yeah.
We pretty much were like at the.
Yeah,
I didn't think we would have. I didn't think we would have enough information to talk about for this particular topic, but
I knew we would. I was like, we're gonna have. We know we will. I know we will.
I was preparing backup stuff just in case. I was like, never mind. We're good. We're good.
Because the thing is, anytime you and I, or especially if Otis is around, if it's a movie or a show that we don't see eye to eye on, we always have a lot to discuss.
Right.
So, yeah.
The content's dope though. Again, I love Star Wars. I love the IP, and I can't wait to see more of it going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to get even like to the points we brought up before earlier. It's going to get even more so like that due to the fact that the next big set trilogy piece that they're going to be going forward with is going to be the Old Republic stuff, which it may be a little different because a lot of people are not familiar with those characters a lot, and they can retcon the characters and change up their origins and make them new so they don't have to follow the history.
Yeah,
but it's dope. It's dope. Craig's question: he has being
good
a
question.
content creator changed or taking away you being a fan? That is an excellent question.
It's a great question.
Do you want to go first with that? You want to answer that first?
Sure, I'll go first. So has being a content creator changed, taken away, or added to my, I guess, fandom? I would say it's kind of all the above in a way. It's because now the thing is, I've been a content creator not for YouTube, but as far as comic books writing goes, for over 10 years. So when you write that much, you actually are involved in creating comic books and making stories. You are very, very keen on making sure things make sense. That's part of your job. Is making sure things make sense. So when I watch a movie or a show and I feel like the writing for one reason or another is lacking or doesn't add up, I can't help but notice that. However, when things do track, when things do add up, I geek out over it even more. So it's a double-edged sword. I appreciate well-made content that much more as a content creator, but also I can't help but mark it when it's not done well. And as far as being a YouTube creator or things of that nature, it's almost, if it's negative, it gives me almost that much more to talk about. So I kind of enjoy it in some way too. So yeah, it's definitely changed things, to answer your question.
For me in particular, I feel like it's a double-edged sword. In some instances, it makes me a lot more pessimistic with some content. There's not as much content nowadays that I can just turn my brain off and enjoy for being just goofy and funny.
Right.
And there are other instances where me being a content creator and knowing I'm gonna have to break this down, so I'm looking at it in a different type of lens, makes me enjoy it even more because now I'm paying a lot more attention to details that I may not have even looked to think about before because I have to explain this in a very concise way going forward.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on the content too. For certain stuff like Star Wars, where it's like that much of influence on my nerddom growing up, I'm always going to be able to enjoy it no matter what context. But if it's something that I'm not having a history with, like Dune, for example, something that we talked about beforehand, I'm going to be looking at it in a more critical way and not really just brain dead looking for it. Because like with this show, I'm just looking for my childhood nostalgia stuff and characters that I've been looking at, so I can like go back to my child place and just enjoy it for it, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, Dev, is that it does make you a more critical watcher in multiple senses. It really does, which is a good thing. I mean, I spend more time. If I know, for example, that we're going to talk about a show or a movie or review something, back in the day, I watched things a lot more with my phone out. I'd be playing on my phone while it's kind of casually playing in the background. But now, if it's a show I know we're going to talk about, for example, I watched Obi-Wan. I watched it twice. They made sure I actually knew what I was going to talk about today without my phone. So it does make you more critical, give you a critical eye.
All right. Which, again, at the end of the day, people forget this. It's entertainment. So at the end of the day, it's just there to entertain you. As long as you're entertained, it is what it is. So critiques are fun, and it's fun to have the conversation about it so you can enjoy it on a different level. Yeah. But I think sometimes people let critiques deter their entertainment, which just don't do. If you enjoy it, you enjoyed 100%. It. There shouldn't be, you don't have to explain why you enjoyed something to people all the time.
100%. I agree. And that's the thing, too. If there will come times where it's like, this I acknowledge this is dumb. I acknowledge this shouldn't work, but for the reason I like it, it just is what it is. Or everything on the surface looks really good. I know everyone else in the world loves it, but for me, it just doesn't work. It happens too. It is what it is. And when you first get involved with this, you feel there's some kind of inclination to defend your answers or defend your takes on things, but there isn't always. You don't always need to defend things.
I think that's just the nature of people that. In society now, where like if you don't think like them, it's a problem, and it can't just be like, oh, we just have different perspectives on something, and it can both be right.
Exactly, and that's one thing too. I'm sure Craig is aware of this as well. There's so much toxic fandom in general. One reason I like doing this show with you and Otis Soups is that we're allowed. Like, we just had a whole half-hour discussion, debate about this, and there was no animosity, there was no name calling, there was no bad blood. It's just we're able to have an open, candid conversation. That's not always the case amongst fans. So.
Right. Chris, I felt dope to be friends with people that one day are going to break records. Keep doing y'all dope individual. I appreciate that, Craig.
Thanks, I appreciate you. Appreciate you, brother.
We're gonna bring you with us, my brother. We're gonna bring you with us. Yeah, we're a little bit over time, but it was great. We had great discussion.
Good conversation.
Next week we'll be back with Mr. Lelouch V. He'll be here hot and fire and probably making up for the lost session that he had today. So I can't wait to have him back.
Exactly, and we're proud of our boy. We will have his book. It's called Briarlands Into the Pyre. I was a writer on it, but it was created by Otis East and Stan. What he's called by, he goes by Keith Stanley, aka Stan Thomas. It will be hopefully available for sale online following this weekend, but they may not have any left. So soon.
I think I have the here's the picture of the cover for people that are wondering what it will look like. This is what it will look like.
That's it. That's the book. So yeah.
Yeah, just real quick before we exit, the last thing that I wanted to kind of get on, I meant to talk about at the beginning of the show, but obviously we talk about nerd related content here more than anything else. But when real life things happen that we feel are important to us, we do want to sometimes address those things.
Yes.
That being of all the mass shootings that have been going on recently in Texas as well as Buffalo, New York. That one hit a little home to me both ways. Obviously, I grew up in being in school all the time, seeing that stuff going on, kind of hit me one way, as well as one of my best friends and Otis and our co-host being he lives in Buffalo, New York. So now I have myself to worry about, as well as like friends of mine that this happened probably relatively close to him. So I just wanted to again, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but more so just kind of bring attention to people that we kind of need to do better as a society. And hopefully for me personally, that's putting more restrictive laws when it comes to gun ownership and gun possession. That's where I personally and individually as a person feel like we should go. Again, other members of my podcast may feel differently, but I won't hate them for that.
No, and I agree with what you're saying. Also, I would just say too that it's hard out there. It's hard out there. I think I'm not here to fault anybody for doing what they do, but if I know myself, I've had to. There have been really rough times, or either depression or other things that go in my life, and I've sought professional help to get to those moments. If you are going through some things, if you're struggling either because of these things or having really weird thoughts because of everything that's going on, please find help. Talk to somebody. Do what you need to do. You're not alone out there. That's all.
Yes, sir. And we'll just end this on a moment of silence for the people that were lost to these tragic events. Thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate the support. This has been another episode of the Then and Now podcast, and we'll see you guys next week, 5:30.
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you. Houdini.
Houdini.